Well, good morning and welcome to this webinar from Bamford Media. I'm Martin Bamford. This webinar is all about how to host financial planner webinars. So I appreciate that's a little bit meta, a webinar about how to host webinars. And good morning, Matt. Thanks for checking in. But all will become apparent, and I'll be explaining the position of webinars within the financial planning marketing journey, how you can really make good, effective use of them. But first, let's pop the slides up so we can see those properly. And I'll put my face in the bottom corner of the screen just so you can still see I'm here and talking to you. A brief introduction for those of you who don't know me. My name is Martin Bamford. I'm CEO of Bamford Media. We're a creative agency working mostly with financial planners, but also with other professional advisors, membership bodies, business coaches. We were 2 years old last week, so we celebrated our second birthday at Bamford Media just last week. And within Bamford Media, we have a big focus on content marketing. So the production of all sorts of content, podcasts, blogs, websites, white papers, magazines, all these sorts of things, and webinars as well. So producing webinars is a big part of what we do for some of our clients. I'm a financial planner as well. I'm a chartered financial planner and a fellow of the Personal Finance Society. So I have that insight for the world of regulated financial planning, and hopefully bringing the two together, marketing, content marketing and regulated financial planning, gives me something unique. I don't believe there are other agencies out there who can blend those two insights together like we do. And that's what we're all about. So that's my introduction. I should say before I get started, please do use the chat bar. And good morning, Paul. Thanks for checking in. Use the chat bar on the right-hand side for any questions you have. And also there's a questions option at the bottom. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. And there'll be, of course, an opportunity at the end as well to ask questions. And stay tuned to the end for some news of upcoming webinars and also an offer and some details and links and things I can give you at the end. So what are we going to cover this morning? This should take no more than about 40 minutes. And as I say, time for questions at the end too. But what we're going to be covering is why I believe webinars are now far superior to seminars. And seminars are fantastic. They're a great way to engage new clients, to demonstrate your expertise, etc. In fact, all the things that webinars do. But webinars have so many advantages over seminars, and I'll explain why. How to structure your webinar, how to put one together, the different components that you need to bring into it, the tools you need to get started. And what I've done to help you with this, as well as talking you through the various tools, I've put together a page on the Bamford Media website with links to the various tools and descriptions. So that makes it nice and easy for you, the Getting Started guide. I'm going to be sharing my complete webinar system. So how I create and produce webinars from start to finish, all the steps involved and why they're so important. And I guess the most important bit, how to use that webinar system to sign more new clients, to get prospective clients through the door, to move them through your sales funnel. I'll be talking about funnels a bit later, and to engage with the right people for your services, to find fee-paying clients. And that's the aim of all of this. And also how to make the most of webinar content. Webinars are not just about the 30, 40, 60-minute broadcast of the webinar itself. It's also about what you do with the webinar afterwards. So I'm talking about repurposing webinar content, really making the most of your content. So that's our agenda for this morning. As I said, ask me questions as we go if you have questions. Why are webinars better than seminars? Now, I love seminars. We've run lots of client seminars in the past and lots of seminars for professional connections. They work. They work really well. The conversion rates are bonkers, really, really high conversion rates. Because once you get somebody in the room and you give your presentation and you answer their questions, and you build some trust and you build a bit of rapport with them and you make an offer, there is a very high conversion from somebody in a seminar to an active buying client. They work really, really well. I'm sure anyone watching this who has hosted seminars in the past will tell you exactly the same thing. Seminars are hard work and they're very difficult in many cases to get the bums on the seats. But once you've got the people in the room, the conversion rates are very high. They're very effective. However, they are very difficult to get going. They're very difficult to attract enough delegates to make it worthwhile. The marketing effort and the promotional effort you have to put into a seminar is considerable. Sending invitations, getting people, existing clients to bring a friend, bring a family member, it's hard work. Even with the best venue, the best subject, the best speaker, it is hard work to fill a seminar. So for that reason, and the sheer cost involved with hosting seminars, venue hire, teas and coffees and food if you do that, the materials you print, There's a high cost consideration for the seminar, which you don't have with a webinar. There's also for the delegate, there's time. And I move on to the second point there, delegate fatigue. We get invited, all of us, to so many different things these days, and we all lead very busy lives. There's very little time to say, okay, I'm going to jump in the car for half an hour, an hour or longer. I'm going to stand around drinking coffee and doing some small talk and chit chat with the other people here. I'm going to sit down for an hour or two and listen to the speaker. I'm going to get back in the car and drive home afterwards. That's most of your day gone, and people just simply don't have time. So I believe there is real delegate fatigue for things that take up considerable amounts of time, unless they're very high value. And later on, I'll be talking about our one-day summit we're hosting in 2 weeks' time. That is a day which I believe people, and lots of people have already booked tickets for, believe is a high-value one-day event. But for a seminar to discuss a subject like retirement planning or seminar or inheritance tax planning seminars, that sort of thing, are people really moved enough to invest all that time getting there, being there, getting home, etc.? So there's delegate fatigue, so many invitations, so little time. There's also this thing about scalability. And the thing about seminars is you might get 12 or 15 or 20 people in a room, and that's great. But you do it, and that's done. You might film a seminar, so there's a bit of longevity associated with filming it if you manage to get that sorted out. But seminars, in my mind, are one to one or one to a few, whereas webinars are one to many. Now, there's no limit on the number of people who can see your webinar, who can be on it live, who can watch the replay. And I'll come on and talk about replays a bit later. So this is about scalability. It's about making the most of that opportunity to get in front of a wider audience. It's also about soft selling. And what I mean by this is there is a natural fear, a natural reluctance by people to go face to face with a financial planner. We are terrifying individuals. I've said this before on previous webinars. We don't believe we are, and we're not. We know we're soft and we're cuddly and the rest of it. But for an average consumer, average prospective client, the prospect of walking into a financial planner's office, sitting down face to face, talking to them about really intimate stuff about your money, about your relationships, about your health, this is a scary, scary prospect. It's a huge hurdle to get over. And also, as well as sharing all that intimate detail, they believe they're going to get sold to, and it's going to be a hard sell. But again, we know this isn't the case. Our clients, our existing clients, know this is not the case, and we are nice people, and we're not aggressive salespeople, and we are sensitive, and we're empathetic, and all the rest of it. The nice thing about webinars and why I believe they beat seminars is it removes that barrier, that fear barrier around being sold to. You're not sat in the same room as the financial planner. There's no risk of go and lock the doors to the hotel room venue and say you're not leaving until you sign up to my product, my service. There's a bit of distance, and this is about moving them along this sort of trust funnel from I don't know who you are, I don't know what you stand for, I don't believe in what you're telling me, all the way through to I'm going to sign a piece of paper, I'm going to tell you all about my pensions, my investments, my spending, my income, my health, my family relationships. That is a huge, huge trust gap to bridge. And webinars work really well as part of that journey. And I'll come on and talk about the journey in a bit. And the last one's a bit of a flippant one, but saving the planet. If you have a seminar at a venue and you invite 20, 30 people along, everyone's getting in their cars and they're polluting. And yeah, I think we're becoming more ecologically sensitive now in terms of the footprint we leave on the planet when we do things. Yeah, we're not printing tons of material when we host a webinar like this. I don't have little presentation packs printed for all the speakers to give to the delegates. We're not giving you all brochures, that sort of thing. So there is an ecological impact here and a benefit, I think, from hosting it as a webinar rather than as a physical seminar. So some tips and some ideas about how to actually go about building a webinar. You need a subject. You need something you're going to talk about. And my advice here is that you go as deep as possible rather than as wide as possible. So pick something rather specific and go really deep into that subject rather than trying to cover too much. And I've made this mistake in previous webinars. The feedback I've had is I've tried to cover, I think one of the earlier ones we did was sort of 10 ideas, 10 marketing ideas to start the year. You can cover an awful lot in 40 minutes, but actually you're better off really demonstrating your expertise, going into a specific subject, and making it as relevant, as informative, and as useful as possible on that subject matter. This comes back to the stuff I talked about before around niche marketing. You've got to have a niche, you've got to have a specific target audience. And the more niche you get and the more targeted you get, the more you'll actually speak to that audience and solve the unique issues they face and position yourself as a credible expert. That's what this is all about. Use slides as a structure, but don't subject your delegates, your webinar attendees, to death by PowerPoint. So prompts only, and hopefully I achieved this in my slide structure just here. A few words on each line, a few lines on each slide. Keep it simple. Use images, and I haven't used many images in this particular presentation, but use images where you can. And use it as just a sort of a crutch for your presentation rather than having all the words up there and the whole presentation up there itself. Prepare, practice makes perfect, or practice at least makes it better. I know it's not particularly natural for many people to sit in front of their computer, in front of their video camera with a microphone and go through a presentation. The more you practice doing this, the easier it gets. I used to be, you may argue watching this, I still am, but I used to be a very nervous presenter. I used to be really struggle with presentation to any audience, whether it was virtually like this for a webinar or standing on stage and speaking to a few hundred people. I started podcasting 4 or 5 years ago and interviewing people for the podcast and presenting podcast episodes. And the act of practice and repetition has just for me made it much easier. If now I have a presentation, a structure like this, I'm quite happy to go through it without too much scripting, without too much rehearsal, and work through it. And again, your feedback, listening to that, maybe you need to practice more, Martin, you're rubbish. And that's fine. I do need to practice more. The more you do it, the easier it gets. Take the traditional presentation structure. This is point 4 on that side there. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. And I think that's a really powerful structure for any presentation, but particularly for webinars. And I'd always say, make sure that your webinar is part of your funnel. So it's part of your sales funnel. Make sure it includes some sort of compelling offer to move them onto the next stage. Because what we're not trying to do here, and I'll come on to talk a bit more about funnels in a second, but what we're not trying to do here is say, grab a prospective client's details, name and email address, show them a webinar, sign them up as a client. This is just a step in the process. Take them gently along that process. Don't try and push them too quickly before they're ready from, I know your name and now you're my client. This is about making sure you take it easy, take it gently, make sure they're comfortable and they're sort of at ease as you do it. But make sure you've got some sort of hook, some sort of next action, because otherwise you're doing taking an email address and registering them for your webinar, nothing. And if you have that sort of stepped process, trust me, you're not going to get many clients. So you need to have webinar something client. So make sure you've got the steps in afterwards, make sure there's a compelling hook. Right, the tools you need to do this. So let's assume you've got your subject. Let's assume you've got a message and something to say. You need to actually have a webinar platform. And the one we're using right now is called Webinar Ninja. It's I've done a lot of research on this. I used to use one called BrightTalk, which is actually very expensive but very good. There's plenty of them out there. There's loads of them out there. Now, Webinar Ninja is very usable, very user-friendly. It's got some great tools and automations in there. It's very good value as well. So the system we use is $39 a month, which is billed annually. And if we're doing 1 or 2 webinars a month, that more than pays for itself as a cost, a marketing cost. You can have on that package, you can have up to 99 people on a live webinar, unlimited webinars. So you can have 1 a day, 2 a day if you want to do that many. You can have unlimited hosts. So if I wanted to, I could have other people on the call with me at different locations, have a whole row of videos up the side of your screen. We could host it together. And it's got some great tools in here. It's got some fantastic landing page templates. So when you registered for this webinar, you would have come through a landing page, which has the title of the webinar, who it's for, when it is, a bit of a countdown clock, a registration button, and also some sort of salesy bits, what you're going to learn in this webinar. You will learn the following. Now, don't underestimate the power of those landing pages. Those landing pages are very, very good at converting somebody from seeing the details about your webinar to pressing register. Paul actually mentioned on Twitter before we got started, he didn't get a calendar notification through from Webinar Ninja, which it should do, and I'm going to check out why that wasn't the case. But Webinar Ninja's got some brilliant integrations, one of which is when somebody registers for your webinar, they get a series of emails. They get the confirmation email to say, thank you for registering, here's how you view it. They get the one to remind them. They should get one with a calendar addition tool on it. So you just click one button and it pops the webinar in their Outlook calendar or their Microsoft, their Google calendar. So they're reminded of it. It's got some brilliant integrations as well with MailChimp, which we use for our email marketing list. So if somebody signs up for your webinar, you can set it up so they automatically get added to your mail list. Your mailing list. So some brilliant tools on here. And actually, when you're hosting, it's very, very easy to do. You can, as you saw me do earlier, you can sort of switch between the camera view and between the slides view very easily. You can have your face in the corner. You can have a chat system on the right-hand side. You can have questions. And Brian confirming that he had multiple reminders for this webinar once he'd registered. So Brian, thank you for letting me know that. It works because as well as somebody registering for your webinar, you want them to actually show up. It's preferable. I'll come on to talk about repurposing in just a moment. It is preferable if somebody shows up for your webinar live, because then they can benefit from the interaction, from asking, having questions answered. They get real value from it. But it doesn't matter if they don't show up live, if they're not able to get to it, because they can get the replay, and that's just as valuable. So Webinar Ninja, tool number one. Tool number two, which is great for getting started with your webinar, and that's Canva. Canva.com is an online graphics design package. We use it for everything here at Bamford Media and also Informed Choice. And don't use PowerPoint for doing your slides. PowerPoint is rubbish. It looks rubbish. It looks like a PowerPoint presentation. So use a tool like Canva, because Canva has got some really nice presentation slide templates in there, which you can personalize with your brand colors, your images, your logos, your fonts. You can drop content into it, and it just looks a lot nicer than a PowerPoint slide. So that's my second recommendation for tools you need to get started. And the third one is making sure you've got a decent camera, hello, on camera, and a decent microphone, hello, on the microphone. And what I've done is I've put together my kit recommendation for a camera, and the one we use is a Logitech HD 1080p camera, and also a microphone. This is an Audio Technica stereo broadcast headset into what we call a Focusrite Scala interface, which goes into the computer. Having good video, having good audio, I think are really important components of a good webinar. So making sure people can hear your voice clearly, they can see you in shocking high definition, sorry about that, but a nice high definition camera sat by a window, so I've got some natural light coming in. So these are important components of having a webinar that works. I've put together a recommended kit list at bamfordmedia.co.uk/webinar ninja, all one word. bamfordmedia.co.uk/webinar ninja. In fact, what I'm going to do as I'm speaking is just type that into here. And hit there. There you go. So that is the link you need to go to get links to the camera I recommend, the microphone and the interface I recommend, and a link to Webinar Ninja as well. So you can check that out if you want to start your own webinars, which I believe you should do. Right then, moving on. My complete system. So this is what I do each time I schedule a webinar, and what you can do as well, the steps you can follow. First step then is to pick a date, pick a time for the webinar. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answers about scheduling these things. I tend to do them on a Thursday morning at 11 o'clock. I mix it up sometimes, I do that other times as well. And there's no harm in having a live time that suits you, because as I said earlier, as well as the live presentation, this is available as a replay later, and people can watch it at a time convenient to them. You're never going to satisfy your entire audience. If you know your audience, you may have a good understanding of when they're likely to be available. And there's no harm in experimenting a bit. 1 month do it at 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning, the next month do it on a Saturday evening, etc., etc. Work through different times, see which you get the most registrations for. So pick a time, pick a date, pick a webinar title. And when it comes to titles, I think things like how-to titles work really well for webinars, and also numbers. 6 secrets to managing the value of your estate when you die, that sort of thing. So how to use numbers, use a compelling title. Once you've done that, you can schedule the webinar in Webinar Ninja. It's literally a few fields to fill out. It's time and date, title, whether it's paid or free. Click publish. It's that simple. Once you've got it scheduled in Webinar Ninja, use their landing page template, their registration page template, and put a nice image in there, put some promotional text in there to tell people the reasons why they should be registering for your webinar, what they're going to gain out of it. And the template I like on Webinar Ninja, the one you would have seen if you when you registered for this one, has sort of 6 different, 2 columns of 3 reasons each on the side. It has big registration buttons. It has a countdown clock. They have tested that landing page to make sure it optimizes it. It converts visitors to registrations. So use their template. Don't try and reinvent the wheel when it comes to landing pages. And then you have to promote it. Then once it's live and people can register, you have to promote it. You have to share the fact you're doing it, and you have to encourage people to register for it. So, sorry, Brian, to notice your question, when should you use live webinars versus recorded webinars? I'll come on to that in just a second, if that's okay. Promote it. And I think ways of promoting it, you should have an email list. You can send it out to your email list. Use social media, of course, to talk about it on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and do organic social media where you actually post content, but also try some paid advertising. Facebook adverts for webinar registrations are fantastic. If you're not doing it already, and this is beyond the scope of this particular session, but if you're not doing it already, make sure you've got the Facebook pixel installed on your website. Make sure you're creating lookalike audiences in Facebook based on your email list and your Facebook pixel visitors, and promote with paid advertising as a lead magnet the webinar as a registration. It works so well. We're doing one shortly for event managers because we've got a podcasting proposition we've put together for event and conference producers, and we are using Facebook advertising to get registrations for that, and it's just incredible. You target your audience, you give them that compelling offer. They register via Facebook itself, so they're not even having to come out of Facebook to register, and it's very powerful. Ask your existing clients, who do they know who would be interested in finding out more about the subject you're going to cover? And then I've said that add delegates to email lists, that's automated. If you use Webinar Ninja, you set up a link between Webinar Ninja and MailChimp or your preferred email list. And each time someone registers, they go onto your email list. This, from a funnel point of view, I think is important. And the reason I think that's important is, again, it's familiarity. It's getting to know you. It's establishing your credibility. Somebody registers for your webinar, but it's not for 2 or 3 weeks' time. In that 2 or 3 weeks, if they start getting your weekly email, they get to know a bit more about you and what you stand for, where your area of expertise is, what you're all about. So by the time they've come through and started watching your webinar, they know what you're about. You're not a stranger. You're not someone cold from, oh yeah, I sort of remember registering for that 3 weeks ago, and now here it is, and let's check this person out. It reduces the degree of cynicism associated with that delegate, because they've had 2 or 3 of your emails in the lead time between registering and watching. And then, of course, post-webinar, they're still getting your emails until they opt out if they decide to. So add your delegates to your email list. And I've said then, make sure you have some sort of compelling offer and upsell at the end of the webinar. So a reason for people to watch the whole thing, a reason for people to stick around, and a way to move them along your funnel as well. What I tend to offer, and what I have offered in the past, I think works well, is a free call or a meeting. I think calls work better in this context than meetings. And this is going back to the financial planner as the big scary beast that people don't want to go in the room with. If you can go from, I don't know you at all, this is just an email, a web page, etc., to, I know you a bit better now, I've seen you on camera, I've seen you present your webinar, etc., to, I know you a lot better now because we've had that face-to-face video call, use Zoom or a tool like that, Skype video, and then they'll meet you. It's just a gentler phasing in of the getting to know you stage. So you can give them things like a free report or a video call, something at the end to move them along your funnel. And don't just offer it in the webinar, offer it in the follow-up email that goes out to them at that point. So how do we actually use these webinars to sign up more clients? Let's assume you've made your webinar, you've produced it, you've presented it, it wasn't a complete disaster. You've had 10, 20, 30, 100 people watch it. How do you actually use it to move clients through the sales funnel? Now, I'd say it's essential when you're hosting a webinar not to go for the hard sell. Use this 80-20 principle. Make sure the majority of what you cover in the webinar is genuinely useful, genuine content. It's not sales pitches. I attended a webinar a few months back and actually wrote a blog about it on the Bamford Media website, and it was awful. The tech was rubbish, but the main reason it was awful was because from the second they started broadcasting to the end of the call, it was a sales pitch, and it wasn't even thinly veiled. It was just, this is how to use our system. And I'm thinking, you had so much potential. You managed to convince me to register for this, telling me what you were going to tell me. And then rather than giving me all this wonderful value that would have made me feel indebted to you, would have made me sort of trust you and get to know you and get to like you a bit more, you just sold at me from day one. Don't do the hard sell. There's no need for it. View this as part of your bigger picture, your bigger sales funnel, and give away lots of really useful, genuinely useful information. The sales pitch can come later. Leave it to the end. Make that the 20%, not even 20%. Make it the 2% at the end of the call. Remember your weapons of influence when you're using these things. And there is a blog on the Bamford Media website, which has proven very popular. I did a few weeks back about 6 different weapons of influence. So very briefly, the weapons of influence are likability, getting to know, like, and trust somebody. And yeah, there's ways to do that. You introduce yourself, you tell them about how you're a family person, a bit about your hobbies, etc. Don't go over the top, but be a person, be somebody they can know and they can get to like. Reciprocity, give away lots, and if you give somebody something, they're more likely to give you something in return. That's just a human behavioral trait we have. Scarcity, in promoting your webinar, make sure you make it clear there is limited space available. And actually, if you use Webinar Ninja on the $39 a month package, there is limited space. You can have up to 100 people on a call. So scarcity is a really good weapon of influence. Authority. Yeah, make sure you talk about your qualifications, but put them in the context of why that's important. Consistency. Don't just do one. Yeah, do them once every 2 weeks, once every 4 weeks. Be consistent. And social proof. If you can add testimonials in there, and Paul's noticed this comes from Professor Cialdini, who's the author of Influence. Absolutely fantastic book, and all financial planners should read Influence and read the work of this chap. But read my blog in the first instance because it summarizes, I hope, how these 6 weapons of influence work for financial planners. Social proof was the last one. So yeah, if other people have used your service, then we're more likely to use it. It's a human behavioral trait. Think about where your webinar works within your funnel. It is that step between getting the name and the email and getting the meeting, but I don't think it should be the only step. I think you should be thinking, how do you gradually move the prospective client from registration through to meeting? Don't make it too jarring, that process. Make it comfortable, make it relaxing, make it easy. Uh, it helps to sketch it out. Have a piece of paper that has the different steps on it. And if anyone wants to chat after this about how to build a funnel with a webinar within it, yeah, I'm very happy to chat about how we do that and how it works. Brian, I'm going to answer these questions actually coming through. I've got one from Paul as well about the Facebook ads. Let me just cover this one first, and I'll come to some questions. If that's okay. Repurposing. Now, I mentioned earlier, not everybody is available to watch your webinar live, and that's absolutely fine. If you use Webinar Ninja, and I know lots of the other platforms are the same too, if they don't manage to watch it live, then get them to register anyway. And then once it's recorded, once you've presented it, it records it and they can watch the replay. Now, there was a webinar last night that I registered for. It was Pat Flynn, who is a podcasting expert, all about how to get more podcasting traffic. 7 o'clock last night because he's in the US, so it was an awkward time in the evening for me. I registered and I was planning to come into the office and watch it. And then I ended up helping my son do a litter pick for his cub group. Um, I've just talked about weapons of influence, haven't I, and likability and all the rest of it. That was not a cynical way to sort of say, look, I'm wonderful, I'm a charitable sort of volunteer, etc. That was genuinely what happened last night. So I registered for this thing at 7 o'clock, ended up doing something else, couldn't watch it live. Today, I get the email from him, sorry you couldn't watch it live, here's the link to the replay. Now, watching the replay is not as valuable as watching it live because you don't get to ask your questions, get them answered live. But there's still value, and there's value for you as the financial planner to offer that replay option, because people who don't watch it live can still watch it. People who completely missed it the first time can still register and watch it on demand. It's a bit like Netflix, and you capture their email address when they do so. So my go-to for repurposing webinar content is drive people to the replay. One way of doing that is after each webinar, write a blog about it and make sure you put a link into the replay. So talk about the bits you covered and then link to the replay. So if they want to go, they can register, they can watch the replay, and they still move through your funnel. Webinar Ninja, once I press stop broadcast at the end of this broadcast, will convert this entire presentation and my video and my speech into a video, which I can then upload to YouTube, to LinkedIn, to Facebook. It's not as good as getting people to watch the webinar, because if they watch it on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, they're not registering. I'm not capturing their details, but it's still helping to build the brand. It's still helping to reach a wider audience. So that's really powerful. And then I'd say the other way to repurpose, which I've not put on the slides because it just came to me last night, is the questions that people ask you. And I'm being asked some questions here. So Brian's asked a question, Paul's asked a question. the questions they ask are content creation opportunities. There's a fantastic book by a chap called Marcus Sheridan called They Ask, You Answer. And it's all about how to create content around the questions that your audience are asking you. So, post this, I'll be adding Brian's question and Paul's question to my list. And in time, I'll be creating content. It might be a blog post, it might be a video, it might be a podcast episode. But there's all sorts of opportunities for repurposing your webinar content. Definitely drive them to the replay version, because then they get to register and you get to capture their details. But take the video, upload it to the different social media platforms, write a blog about it, embed the video in the blog, link to the replay, make use of it. Don't just view the webinar as that one 40-minute opportunity, and if people missed it, they missed it. Use it, reuse it, and do it again. Before I answer some questions, then just a few final thoughts to wrap up with. Practice makes better. Don't expect to be great at these the first time. Don't expect to ever be perfect at them. You'll always make mistakes. You'll always think afterwards, gosh, I could have done that bit a bit better. But practice, and don't just practice doing webinars. You can practice by recording podcasts, recording videos, etc. Just get better, feeling more comfortable with your key messages and how you get them across. Understand where the webinar sits within your funnel, sketch it out. Understand it is just part of a number of steps you're taking for somebody from discovery through to implementation, and take advantage of what I believe is early mover advantage. There are not many, if any, financial planners who are sorry. There are not many, if any, who are doing this on a regular basis. I'm going to take a swig of water now. I just realised I've been talking for half an hour without actually drinking anything. So early mover advantage in this context means there's not much competition for this. If you're advertising these webinars on different subjects on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, etc., you're not competing against 100 other financial planners who are doing the same. So I'd suggest get into this as early as you can and start practicing, start doing it, and you'll soon get better. Don't expect your first one to be great. Right, I'm going to let's answer these questions before I move on to sort of the end bit. So Brian has asked, when should you use live webinars versus recorded webinars? My preference, Brian, would be to use live webinars wherever you can, because I think you can broadcast them live, you can have that interaction with your audience, you can answer questions, and you don't get that within a recorded webinar. Effectively, a recorded webinar is just a video you're broadcasting. Now, one of my clients I'm doing this with at the moment, we've created a recorded webinar because they are going to be hosting presenting at a series of conferences, and we've used the webinar as part of their sales funnel. So they'll capture details of delegates at the conference. We'll push them through to the webinar, which will be broadcast on a number of different times and dates. So I think they're given a choice of 3 or 5 different dates they can register for. And at the end of each webinar, there's a call to action, which is to book a call with one of the 2 experts. So there is a place for recorded webinars, and I think they can be quite powerful and effective. But I think that the real power comes from doing it live, because it's more human, it's more natural. You get to ask and answer questions. You get to interact with the audience as you're going through it. And as I mentioned, once I finished and pressed stop broadcast, this becomes a recorded version anyway. It becomes a replay. So all of your live content is recorded content, whereas your recorded content is only recorded content, if that makes sense. So I hope that's all good. I should press that first. There we go. And then Paul asks, do you do all your Facebook ads yourself or use a helper? Mostly myself. I've now got a fantastic colleague here at Bamford Media who's only started this week, Catherine, who's going to be doing a lot more of that sort of thing for me. And I've got a freelancer I use called Lucy, who's a Facebook advertising genius. She's a genius when it comes to creating ads, which then move into lead acquisition, which is very relevant for webinar advertising. So it's all in-house here, but we can do that for our clients, and we can help you set up the Facebook pixel. So it's capturing visitor data on your website, which you can then later retarget in Facebook. So powerful, and so few financial planners doing that. And you can create lookalike audiences and really target the right people who are likely to respond to your Facebook adverts. Any more questions, please pop them in, just so I wrap things up. I hope that's been useful. I hope that's given you a flavour of how we approach webinars, how they sit within the process. We've got 2 more webinars scheduled. So next one's on Wednesday, the 3rd of July at 4 o'clock, and that's all about building your financial planner brand. And then after that, 11 o'clock on Thursday, the 5th of September, everything you need to know about lead magnets, and these are proving to be really popular. Charlie's just asked, and let's answer that one. Have you ever thought about having a private locked platform for clients to access content? Charlie, watch this space for a solution around that. I think if you're thinking about it for a financial planner, yeah, absolutely. I wrote an article on the Bamford Media website a week or so ago about applying the 1,000 True Fans methodology for financial planners. I think that ties in very nicely with that. There's obviously advantages, and something we're doing at Informed Choice at the moment is investigating using a secure document locker, etc., for client correspondence. Gareth Thompson from Co-Potato just created a wonderful one, which is worth a look, called File Haven. There's others out there as well. But a content platform, not necessarily for clients, but for fans, for people you more broadly engage with, I think is a wonderful idea. But then, it's balancing up whether you want to be keeping that secret and private and locked away. It's almost like premium content. What I suggest is you have lots of free content, and the premium stuff is the added value stuff, the behind the scenes, etc. Yeah, and that's how it works. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Worth exploring. Paul's just said there he's in the process of building a membership area. I think more and more financial educators like Paul and people who have podcasts, etc., are likely to go down that route. So have their free content, their free podcasts, their free blogs, etc., their free YouTube channel, and then have their premium content. One option you can use for that is Patreon. If you've seen this before, Patreon is a system where you ask people to pay different membership fees, and within the Patreon system, you get access to locked content, private locked content. So that's worth exploring. Brian's just asked, sorry, I remember to click this first. That works better. Brian has just asked, when Webinar Ninja posts to YouTube, is it under their account or your own? Now, the way it works, Brian, is once I press stop broadcast, Webinar Ninja will convert this into the replay, and they'll convert it into a video. I'll download the video onto my hard drive, and then I'll upload it into my YouTube account. So I've got control over the title, the description, the tags, the time I post it, everything else. So under your account. And it's a really simple system. And I have to admit, I didn't realize I could do that until about 2 months ago, when I already had about 7 webinars under my belt. It was brilliant. I went back through Webinar Ninja, downloaded all the videos from previous ones, and uploaded them all to my YouTube channel for Bamford Media. And yeah, that was just perfect, really. There we go. So that answered. Right, there's 2 webinars that we've got coming up. We'll be announcing some more dates and times and titles for new webinars in the autumn as well. But let me know what you want me to talk about on these. So if there's a particular subject you want me to cover, drop me a line, and I'm very happy to put together a webinar on that and answer questions. The big sort of push before I finish things off, it's only 2 weeks tomorrow, the Financial Planner Marketing Summit, Friday the 21st of June 2019 at the Electric Theatre in Guildford. We've got 10 wonderful speakers plus me, so 11 in total. And do come along. A few tickets still available. Yesterday, Harriman House, who's a publisher we do a lot of work with, very kindly, very generously has given us a huge box of the Investment Trust Handbook, which will be going in every delegate bag. So there's an extra goodie for everyone to come into that as well. But it's promising to be a really good day out of the office, learning from just some wonderful, wonderful people, leaders in their fields, and getting the cutting edge information about what's going on. I've answered questions. I think there's no more open questions on the bottom. Would you like to have a no obligation, completely free of cost video call with me, 30 minutes or so, to talk about any marketing goal you've got at the moment and how we might be able to help you with that? Drop me a line, hello@bamfordmedia.co.uk. Or if you go onto the Bamford Media website, bamfordmedia.co.uk, on the front page, there's now a button where you can click and schedule a video call with me. You can go straight into my calendar, pick a time and date that suits you, and schedule that video call. So I'd love to hear any aspect of your marketing you want to discuss. Let's do that. So thank you very much. Oh, Paul's just got one. Contact with Lucy for creative Facebook ads. Paul, drop me a line and we'll set that up. Thank you everyone for watching this webinar broadcast from Bamford Media, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. I hope that's been useful. Do join us for the next webinar if you can, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.